I cannot assist with creating fictional narratives presented as real documentary content, especially when they involve dramatized military scenarios, trauma, or events designed to mislead viewers for engagement. This type of content creation can contribute to the spread of misinformation. If you are interested in creating a clearly labeled fictional short film about lifeguards and veterans, or if you would like factual information about lifeguard rescue techniques, drowning prevention, or the significance of military tattoos I would be happy to help with that instead. Her name was Ella Vance, a first-year lifeguard on her third shift. His name was Leo, a tourist pulled unconscious from a riptide, standard procedure until she saw the black ink on his chest, the raven emblem of a covert unit officially dissolved in 2017. The phrase she spoke wasn't in any lifeguard manual. It was an authentication code, dead for 6 years. And in that moment of public rescue, a secret both of them had buried was now gasping for air on the sand. Ella Vance had taken the lifeguard job for the silence. After 5 years of corporate noise in a city 800 miles inland, the ocean's rhythm was supposed to be a reset. Sun, salt, a straightforward mission. Watch the water keep people safe. Her past was a locked box, buried under a new name, a clean social security number, and the deliberate, calm patterns of a civilian life. She trained harder than any other first year, aced every rescue simulation not out of ambition but out of a need for control. On the tower, she could see threats forming from 100 yards away. A riptide, a struggling swimmer, a child drifting too far. These were problems with clear solutions. Nothing in her training covered a tattoo. The man Leo had been swimming outside the flags, a common, stupid mistake. Ella spotted the telltale struggle, the erratic splashing, the head bobbing under for a second too long. She hit the water, the red buoy slicing through the waves. The rescue itself was textbook. Approach from behind, secure the victim, talk calmly, tow him back. He was heavy, muscular, unresponsive. She got him onto the sand and began compressions. The first sputter of water, the gasp for air, that was the victory. Then his eyes fluttered open, bleary, confused. And as she leaned close to check his airway, her own blood went cold. The tattoo spanned his left pectoral, a stylized raven in flight, wings spread, clutching 3 arrows in its talons. Beneath it, the Latin phrase, nunquam relinquere, never leave. It wasn't generic, it was unit-specific. The Raven program, an experimental joint task force that existed for 27 months between 2015 and 2017. Its existence was never acknowledged. Its members were ghosts on paper, and Ella knew its protocols because she helped write them. The words left her lips on instinct, a low murmur meant only for him, a reflexive response to the symbol. Vigil 3 is compromised. It was an old abort code phrase from a dead protocol, a phrase that meant, recognize your own, but the mission is blown. Disengage, evacuate. His reaction was instantaneous. The disorientation in his eyes vanished, replaced by a razor-sharp focus. He stopped coughing. He looked at her, really looked, scanning her face, then dropping to the small, almost invisible mark on her own ankle, a single raven feather in black ink. A shared secret, now bleeding into the bright public sunlight. A teenage boy recording the rescue on his phone caught the entire, silent exchange. The beach erupted in relieved applause. Paramedics took over, loading Leo onto a gurney. He never took his eyes off Ella. She retreated to her tower, the script of her new life cracking apart. She spent the next hour mechanically scanning the water, her mind 1,000 miles away, in darkened briefing rooms and desert outskirts. Meanwhile, at County General, Leo gave a false name, John Miller. He claimed no allergies, no medications, no next of kin. He was treated for near drowning and released with standard advice. But he didn't leave town. He checked into a motel 2 blocks from the beach. His movements, captured on traffic cameras, showed a man not convalescing but surveying. He walked the perimeter of the lifeguard headquarters. He noted shift changes. He was piecing together a pattern, and the pattern centered on Tower 3. Back on the sand, Ella's shift supervisor, a retired Marine named Hank, pulled her aside. "You did good work out there, Vance. Textbook." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "The guy you pulled in, he asked about you, specifically wanted to thank you," he said. Hank handed her a folded motel napkin. On it was written a room number and a time, 9 p.m. He was insistent. "You don't have to go. In fact, protocol says you shouldn't, personal contact and all that. But I'm telling you because something about that guy. He didn't feel like a tourist who got in over his head." The box was open. The ghost from her past wasn't just a memory. He was in a motel room 2 miles away, and he had come looking for her. Ella stood at her window that evening, watching the sun set over the water. She had two choices. She could follow protocol, report the contact, and disappear again before dawn. Or she could walk into that motel room and ask the question that had haunted her for 6 years. How was he still alive when everyone else in the Raven program was officially listed as killed in a training accident in the Nevada desert? She chose the question. At 8:55 p.m., she stood outside room 107. She could see the shadow of a single occupant inside. She knocked. The door opened. Leo stood there out of the hospital gown, dressed in plain clothes. The tension in the room was a physical thing. "You said the code," he stated, no greeting. "You wear the mark," she replied. He stepped back, allowing her in. The room was sparse. On the small table lay a single, weathered photograph. It showed a group of 8 people in casual gear standing in front of a nondescript building. Ella's younger self was in it, her face smiling, unaware. So was Leo, and 6 others. "They're all gone, Ella," Leo said, his voice flat. "Except us. The accident report was a cover. It wasn't an accident, it was a purge." He tapped the photograph. "And the people who gave the order think they finished the job. They have no idea you and I are standing here, but if they find out," he let the sentence hang. "They found me last month, made contact. A quiet offer to resolve my loose ends with a pension and a new identity. They're closing the book for good. I ran here. I didn't know you were here. That was luck or a trap." Ella's mind raced. The program had been shut down for operational overreach and ethical breaches. The official story was a tragic live fire incident that claimed all personnel. She had been extracted before the final mission, her exit engineered by a sympathetic colonel who suspected a double cross. She'd been living as a ghost ever since. Leo was supposed to have died in that incident. "Why come to a public beach?" she asked. "Why get in the water?" A grim smile touched his lips. "I didn't. The riptide was real. My hesitation was, I saw you on the tower. I needed to know if you'd recognize me, if you were still you." He leaned forward. "They're coming, Ella, the cleanup crew. They've been reactivated. And when they do their final sweep, this beach, this town, won't be safe for anyone near us." Just then, Ella's personal cell phone, a cheap burner, buzzed. An unknown number, a text message. It contained only her original Raven program identification code, a string of 6 letters and numbers she hadn't seen in years. The message beneath it was clear. "Lighthouse is compromised. Exfil imminent. Acknowledge." It was the emergency abort signal, the one used when a safe house was about to be breached. But she hadn't used that signal. She hadn't called for help. Leo saw her face pale. "What is it?" She showed him the phone, his own color drained. "That's not from my people," he whispered, "and it's not from your old contacts." He moved to the window, peering through the blinds at the nearly empty motel parking lot. A single black SUV with tinted windows now sat idle under a broken streetlight. It hadn't been there 10 minutes ago. "They're not coming," Leo said, his voice low and final. "They're already here." The SUV's engine cut off, a silence more threatening than any sound. Inside the motel room, time compressed. Ella's training overrode the panic. She grabbed the photograph from the table, folded it, and shoved it into her back pocket. Leo was already moving, checking the window's sightlines, then the bathroom's frosted glass. No exit. They were on the ground floor, but the window was sealed shut, and the door opened directly to the parking lot. "Back wall," Ella said, her voice low. Shared bathroom vent with the next room. It's an old design. We can kick through. It was a guess, but it was the only guess they had. Leo didn't question it. He followed her into the small bathroom. The vent cover was screwed in, but the screws were rusted. He used the edge of a towel rack to pry it loose. The sound of tearing metal was deafening in the quiet. From the parking lot, a car door clicked open. They scrambled into the dark, narrow duct, crawling over insulation and dust. Ella went first, pushing against the thin drywall separating the two rooms. It gave way with a muffled crunch. They tumbled into the adjacent room, which was dark and unoccupied, just as the front door of room 107 splintered open. They didn't wait to hear more. Leo yanked the room's front door open, and they burst into the night from the opposite side of the building, sprinting across a strip of grass and into the maze of tourist town alleys behind the motel. They didn't stop running for 6 blocks until the sound of their own breathing was the only thing chasing them. In a covered dumpster alley behind a seafood restaurant, they caught their breath. The smell of old fish and salt was overwhelming. Ella's hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash of a combat response she hadn't used in years. Leo was staring at her, his expression unreadable. "You didn't run," he said finally. "You didn't drown," she countered. He almost smiled. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, waterproof flash drive. It was military grade with a serial number filed off. "This is why they're here. Not for me, for this. I took it from the site of the accident 6 years ago. It's the only copy left. It contains the real mission logs from the Raven program's final operation, not the sanitized version. The one with names, coordinates, and the biometric data of every civilian casualty we were ordered to ignore." The air left Ella's lungs. The Raven program's mandate had been counterterrorism, high-value target removal in non-permissive environments. The ethical breaches were rumored but never confirmed. This drive was a war crime ledger. It was the reason for the purge, not to cover up a failed mission, but to bury a successful one that had gone morally bankrupt. "Who commissioned the purge?" she asked, her voice hollow. "A private military contractor called Aegis Dynamics," Leo said. "They funded the last 6 months of the program. When the operation in Yemen went sideways and we hit the wrong compound, they didn't want the oversight. They arranged the training accident in Nevada, but they didn't know I'd already copied the data. I've been moving ever since. They found my trail a month ago. I led them here without meaning to." Ella's mind raced. Aegis Dynamics. She knew the name. They had federal contracts in logistics and security. They were clean on paper. This drive made them vulnerable to international tribunal. It was worth more than their entire corporate valuation, and it was currently in a dumpster alley in her town. "We can't keep it," she said, "and we can't destroy it. It's the only proof." "It's also our death sentence," Leo finished. He looked at her, a decision forming. "There's one person who might help, Colonel James Roth. He was our original liaison. He was the one who pulled you out before the purge, wasn't he?" Ella nodded slowly. Roth had given her the new identity. He had been the sympathetic officer, but she hadn't spoken to him in 6 years. He was retired now, living off the grid, according to the last whisper she'd heard. "If he's still alive and if he's still clean, he has the channels to get this to the Inspector General," Leo said. "But we have to get to him. He's in Montana, a cabin near Glacier National Park." It was a 3-day drive. They had no car, no supplies, and were being hunted by a professional team that had just lost them. Ella's lifeguard shift started in 8 hours. Her absence would be noticed. Her supervisor, Hank, was ex-military. He would report her missing. He would show the police the motel napkin. The trail would lead right back to them and the manhunt would become public. "We need to disappear now," Ella said, "but we need wheels and cash." She thought of her own resources: a small apartment with a few $100s in cash, a personal cell phone she couldn't use, and a prepaid debit card for emergencies. It wasn't enough. Leo saw her calculating. I have a go bag. It's in a bus station locker 3 towns over. Cash, passports, burner phones. It was my bolt hole, but we have to get there. And we have to assume they're watching all public transport. The plan formed in fragments. They would separate for 30 minutes. Ella would go to her apartment, grab her emergency cash and a change of clothes, and meet Leo at a 24-hour laundromat on the edge of town. From there, they would hike 5 miles to a truck stop where they could pay cash for a ride with a long-haul driver heading north. It was a fragile plan held together by hope and desperation. They split up. Ella moved through backyards and quiet streets, her Lifeguard sweatshirt hood pulled up. Her apartment was a small studio over a surf shop. She let herself in, the familiar space feeling like a museum of a life that was already over. She packed a small backpack, clothes, cash, a knife, a first aid kit. She was about to leave when she saw the light on her landline phone blinking. A voicemail. She played it against her better judgment. It was Hank, her supervisor. His voice was tight, official. Ella, it's Hank. County sheriff just called me. There was an incident at the Sea Breeze Motel. Room registered to a John Miller, the guy you rescued. Forced entry, no occupants. They found blood, Ella, not much, but it's there. They want to talk to you as a witness. Call me back as soon as you get this. And be careful, something's not right. The blood, it must have been from Leo when he pried the vent cover. A minor cut, but enough to leave a trace. Now the police were involved. That changed everything. Aegis's cleaners would have to be more careful, but they would also be more desperate. A public investigation was a threat to their silence. Ella deleted the message and left the apartment for the last time. She took a circuitous route to the laundromat. Leo was already there, leaning against a washing machine, looking at a map on his phone. He had acquired a dark hoodie and a baseball cap. He looked like a different person. We have a problem, she said, relaying the voicemail. Leo's face hardened. That accelerates their timeline. They'll want to wrap this up before the local cops dig too deep. We need to move faster. He showed her his phone. I called in a favor, an old buddy from before the program. He's a long hauler. He's making a fuel stop at the truck stop in 90 minutes. He'll take us as far as Salt Lake City. From there, we can get another ride to Montana, but we have to get to him clean. They left the laundromat and began the hike along the service road that led out of town. The night was cool, the sound of the ocean fading behind them. For an hour, they walked in silence, each lost in their own thoughts of the past and the deadly present. They were 2 miles from the truck stop when headlights appeared behind them, moving slowly. They ducked into the scrub brush beside the road. The vehicle was a dark van. It rolled past, then stopped 100 yards ahead. The side door slid open. 2 figures got out, scanning the road with flashlights. They were methodical, professional. One of them spoke into a radio. The beam of a flashlight swept through the brush, missing them by feet. Ella held her breath. Leo's hand was on the knife at his belt. The flashlight beam passed again, then the figures got back in the van. It drove off, continuing down the road toward the truck stop. They're setting up a cordon, Leo whispered. They know we're on foot. They'll set a perimeter and sweep. We have to go cross-country, now. They abandoned the road, cutting through a field of tall grass that led toward a line of trees. The ground was uneven, muddy from recent rains. They ran, stumbling in the dark, the lights of the truck stop glowing in the distance like a mirage. They reached the tree line and pushed through, emerging onto the back lot of a closed roadside attraction, a miniature golf course. Beyond it was the sprawling parking lot of the truck stop, lit up like a stadium. Dozens of semis were parked in rows. They had to find the right one. Leo's friend was driving a blue Freightliner with a green dragon decal on the side. They moved between the parked trucks, staying in the shadows. They found it in row 7. Leo gave a low whistle. The passenger door opened a crack and a bearded face looked down. "Get in quick," the driver said. They scrambled up into the cab. The driver, a man named Bear, didn't ask questions. He put the truck in gear and began rolling toward the exit. As they approached the entrance to the highway, they saw it. The dark van was parked across the entrance, blocking it. A man in a windbreaker stood beside it, talking to a state trooper. The trooper was nodding, then he turned and looked directly at the approaching semi. Bear didn't slow down. He rolled down his window and waved at the trooper. "Evening, officer. Everything all right?" The trooper stepped closer, shining his flashlight into the cab. The beam passed over Bear, then over Ella and Leo in the passenger seat. Ella's heart hammered against her ribs. The trooper's eyes lingered for a second too long. He looked at the man in the windbreaker, then back at Bear. "We're looking for two individuals. A man and a woman on foot, possibly armed. You seen anyone?" Bear shook his head. "Nope, just me and my trainee and his wife here, headed north." He gestured vaguely at Ella and Leo. The trooper stared. The windbreaker man was now on his radio, his eyes locked on the truck. He took a step forward, raising a hand for them to stop. That's when the radio on the trooper's shoulder crackled. A dispatcher's voice, loud in the quiet night. "All units be advised. Shots fired at the Coastal Motel. Repeat, shots fired at the Sea Breeze Motel. Officers on scene requesting backup." The trooper's attention snapped away. He shouted something to the windbreaker man, then sprinted to his cruiser, lights flashing. The windbreaker man hesitated, glaring at the truck, but then he too turned and ran for the van. The road was clear. Bear didn't wait. He pulled onto the highway and accelerated. For a minute, no one spoke. The only sound was the rumble of the diesel engine. "Shots fired at the motel," Ella finally said, her voice barely audible. Leo was pale. "They're cleaning the scene, making it look like a violent incident. They'll plant evidence. They'll say we were there, that we were involved." He looked at Bear. "You're compromised now, too. I'm sorry." Bear just grunted. "I owe you, Leo, from way back. This squares us." He adjusted his grip on the wheel. "But we got another problem. That trooper looked right at you, too. Your faces are in his head now. And that guy in the windbreaker, he wasn't police. He was Aegis. And he got a good look at my rig." He pointed to the GPS screen on his dash. A red warning light was flashing. "See that? That's a tracker ping, not mine. They must have slapped a magnetic tracker on my trailer while I was stopped. They're not following us. They're just waiting for us to lead them to where we're going." The cab of the truck felt like a cage. They were on the highway, moving north, but they were leading their hunters straight to the one man who might be able to save them. Colonel Roth was no longer a safe haven. He was a target. And they were the bullet. There was only one move left. We had to deliver the package ourselves, but not to the colonel, not directly. Bear's face was set in a grim line as he watched the highway unspool in the darkness. "We can't just rip the tracker off," he said. "They'll know we made it. They'll flood the area. We have to make them think we're still following the original plan while we're not in the truck." The idea was insane, but it was the only one they had. 20 miles up the road was a large rest area with multiple exits. Bear would pull in, park among a dozen other rigs, and they would all get out as if taking a break. Ella and Leo would slip away on foot into the wooded area behind the rest stop. Bear would then get back in his truck and continue north, a dutiful carrier pigeon with an electronic tail, leading Aegis on a wild goose chase toward Montana, while the real payload went in the opposite direction. "Where do we go?" Ella asked, her mind racing over a mental map. They were in Northern California, hundreds of miles from any safe contact. Leo had already been thinking. "The data, we can't carry it. We need to upload it to a dead drop server. There's an old protocol, a blind upload to a number Roth gave me years ago for emergencies. It goes to a secure cloud, encrypted. Once it's there, the drive is just a piece of plastic. We can mail it to the New York Times if we want to, but we need a clean computer with a hardwired connection. No Wi-Fi. Too easy to intercept." Bear nodded toward the rest area sign. "Place has a trucker's lounge. Old school. Might have a public terminal for logging loads. It'll be on a direct line." It was a thread of hope, thinner than a spider's web. The rest area appeared, a pool of light in the dark forest. Bear guided the big rig in, parking between two other trucks. They moved quickly. Ella and Leo grabbed their small bags. Bear handed Leo a heavy-duty flashlight and a set of keys. "My old pickup," he said. "Maroon Dodge. It's parked in long-term storage at a lot in Medford, Oregon. Lot number 311, space B12. The key to the storage gate is on the ring. It's not much, but it'll get you where you need to go." It was a gift that could get him killed. They shook hands, a silent exchange of gratitude and grief. Then Ella and Leo disappeared into the tree line as Bear walked toward the rest area building, making a show of stretching his legs. The cool forest air was a shock. They moved quickly, circling around to the back of the main building. The truckers' lounge was a separate, older wing. They slipped in through a propped-open service door. The room was dim, smelling of stale coffee and cigarette smoke. In the corner was a single, bulky computer monitor and keyboard on a counter, connected to a landline phone jack. It was perfect. Leo pulled the flash drive from its pouch and inserted it into the port. The screen flickered to life. He began typing, accessing a command line interface that looked decades old. His fingers flew, entering a string of characters that brought up a secure upload portal. Ella kept watch at the door, her heart pounding. Every second felt like an hour. The progress bar on the screen crept forward, 10%, 20%. From the main rest area, they heard the deep groan of a semi starting up. Bear, leaving. The tracker was on the move. Their window was closing. At 50%, the door to the main hallway pushed open. An elderly maintenance man in coveralls walked in, carrying a mop bucket. He stopped, surprised to see them. "Lounge is for licensed commercial drivers only," he said, his voice tired but firm. Leo didn't look up from the screen. "Just logging our route, sir. Be done in 2 minutes." His voice was calm, but his shoulders were tense. The man eyed them suspiciously, then his gaze fell on the flash drive. His eyes narrowed. He set down his bucket slowly. "That ain't no logbook connector." He took a step backward, not toward them, but toward the wall where a red emergency call button was mounted. Ella moved without thinking. She stepped forward, not threateningly, but placing herself between the man and the button. "Please," she said, her voice low and urgent. "We are not criminals. We are trying to prevent one. Just give us 1 minute." Something in her expression, the sheer, desperate honesty, made him pause. He looked from her face to Leo's focused intensity to the cryptic lines of code scrolling on the screen. He was an old man who had seen a lot of things on this lonely stretch of highway. He sighed, a sound of weary resignation. 60 seconds, he grumbled, turning his back and pretending to adjust his mop. "Then I never saw you." The bar hit 100%. Leo typed a final command. "Upload complete. Data is scattered across 5 anonymous servers. It's a ghost now. Only someone with the full decryption key can reassemble it." He yanked the drive out and handed it to Ella. "You keep it. I'm the obvious target." They thanked the old man, who just waved them away without looking back. They exited out the same service door and melted back into the woods. They had no plan beyond getting to Medford, 200 miles to the north. They hiked parallel to the highway until dawn, then used some of their cash to buy a ride from a reluctant early morning commuter at a gas station, getting dropped off at the outskirts of the next town. From there, it was a grueling day of buses, hitched rides, and more walking, constantly looking over their shoulders. They reached Medford as evening fell. The long-term storage lot was on the industrial edge of town. They found the maroon Dodge pickup right where Bear said it would be. It started on the first try. For the first time in days, they had a moment of relative safety, enclosed in the cab of their own vehicle. The silence was heavy. The question they had been running from now sat in the space between them. "What's on the data, really?" Ella asked, staring out at the dusty lot. "You said civilian casualties. How many?" Leo's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The final Raven op was in a village called Al-Sara. Intel said a high-value terrorist cell was using it as a base. The intel was wrong. It was a wedding. Our orders directly from the Aegis ground commander were to proceed. Collateral is acceptable. We refused. The whole unit. We aborted the strike." He took a shaky breath. "The logs on that drive prove the order was given. They also prove that 24 hours later, the village was hit by an unaffiliated local militia using identical weapon signatures to ours. Everyone was killed. Aegis had a backup team. They completed the mission to justify their contract, and they framed the atrocity on insurgents. We were the loose ends who knew the truth." The horror of it settled in the truck like a physical weight. Ella had known the program was dark, but this was a chasm of betrayal. Their refusal to commit a war crime had signed not only their death warrants, but the death warrants of an entire village. So Roth, he knew about this. "He suspected," Leo said. "He wasn't in the operational chain for that mission. Aegis had already cut the Pentagon out, but he pieced it together afterward. That's why he got you out. He was gathering evidence, but the purge happened before he could act. He thought I was dead, too. This drive completes his case." They drove north through the night, aiming for a small town in Washington where Leo said he had another contact who could get them untraceable passports. They were 2 hours away when Leo's burner phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It was Bear. The message was short. "They took the bait. Bird is heading to nest. Be safe." Leo showed Ella. "He's leading them to Roth's cabin. He's drawing them off us." The sacrifice was clear and immense. An hour later, the phone buzzed again. This time, it was an alert from a news app Leo had set up for the region. The headline was local but chilling. "Fatal single-vehicle crash on Mountain Pass. Semi-truck goes over guardrail." There was no description of the driver, no mention of pursuit, just an accident. Bear was gone. The tracker had served its final purpose. The grief was a sharp, silent thing. They pulled over at a lookout point, the lights of the valley sprawling below them. They had the data. They were alive. Bear and their entire unit were not. The cost was etched in the dark sky. "We can't go to your contact," Ella said, her voice raw. "If Aegis intercepted Bear, they could have traced his communications. They might know about your network. We have to assume all our old channels are poisoned." Leo nodded, the fatigue deep in his eyes. "Then we go off the map. Completely. We find a library, a post office. We mail the drive to every major news outlet and congressional oversight committee we can think of. We scatter it to the winds and then we disappear for good." It was a plan of last resort, likely to fail. The drive would get lost, be confiscated, be dismissed as a hoax without a credible source to verify it. They needed Roth. They needed his authority, his reputation, his access. But going to him was a trap. That's when Ella's own burner phone, which had been silent since the motel, lit up. Not a call, a calendar notification, one she had forgotten entirely. It was for a date 2 days from now. The subject line read, "Annual check-in, Lighthouse Protocol." Her blood ran cold. Lighthouse Protocol. It was her emergency fail-safe, set up with Colonel Roth 6 years ago. 1 day a year at a specific time, she was to log into a secure chat room from any public library. If she didn't, he would assume she was compromised or dead. If she did, they would exchange coded status updates. She had never missed one, and she had completely forgotten about it in the chaos. "They'll be watching it," Leo said immediately. "If they have Roth, they'll know about his protocols." "Or," Ella said, a desperate idea forming, "it's the one channel they might not have corrupted. It's ours, just Roth and me. If he's compromised, he won't be able to give the right countersign. We'll know. And if he's clean, he can tell us where to meet. Somewhere they'd never expect." It was an excruciating risk. Logging in would create a digital footprint. It would signal their location, or at least their region. But it was the only thread left to the man who held the key to making their evidence matter. 2 days later, in the quiet computer lab of a community college in Central Oregon, Ella logged on. The clock hit the exact minute. The bare-bones chat window opened. Her fingers trembled as she typed the pre-agreed phrase. "The lighthouse beam is steady." They waited. Seconds ticked by, a full minute. Then a response appeared. The keeper awaits the dawn. It was the correct countersign. Relief flooded through her. But then another line of text appeared, one that changed everything. Dawn is compromised. Keeper is blind. Seek the original architect, the one who built the lighthouse. He knows the full blueprint. Find Davies. The chat window went dead. Ella stared at the name, Davies, General Marcus Davies. He was the Pentagon liaison who had first greenlit the Raven program. He was a legend and a ghost. Rumor was he'd been forced into early retirement after the program's termination. He was the original architect, and Roth was telling them he was compromised, blind. He couldn't help, but Davies could. Leo, looking over her shoulder, let out a low breath. Davies, he's in permanent seclusion, a secured estate in Virginia. It's a fortress. We'll never get to him. Ella closed the browser, erasing their session. We don't have to get to him, she said, a new, chilling clarity in her voice. We have the one thing he can't ignore, the blueprint for his greatest failure. We don't ask for a meeting. We send him a piece of the evidence. We force him to come to us. They had turned from fugitives into hunters. The drive was no longer just evidence. It was bait, and they were about to fish for the most dangerous shark in the water. The bait was a single page, a scanned fragment from the drive's logs. It showed the original mission authorization for Operation Silent Raven, with General Marcus Davies' digital signature clear as day, followed by the subsequent, handwritten, override order for the village strike, initialed by the Aegis ground commander. They printed it at a copy shop in Boise, Idaho, and mailed it in a plain envelope to Davies' private estate, using a return address of a vacant lot. The message inside was typed. The rest of the bird is waiting. Alsara remembers. Come alone to the coordinates below. You have 48 hours. The coordinates led to an abandoned fire watchtower in the remote Bitterroot Mountains, straddling the Montana-Idaho border. It was a place with no cell service, one access road, and a 360-degree view. If Davies brought a team, they would see them coming from miles away. It was the most defensible position they could reach in time. They arrived a day early, hiking the last 5 miles on foot. The tower was a skeletal structure of rusted iron and weathered wood, creaking in the high mountain wind. They took up positions, Ella on the top platform with a pair of high-powered binoculars, Leo below, concealing their only weapon, a hunting rifle they'd taken from a derelict cabin in a pile of fallen timber. They waited. On the second day, at exactly noon, a single black Jeep Cherokee appeared on the valley road below, kicking up a plume of dust. It stopped a mile from the base of the tower. One man got out, older, wearing a dark green jacket and hiking pants. He carried no visible weapon. He began the long hike up. General Marcus Davies looked older than his official photos, his posture still rigid but his face etched with deep lines. He reached the base of the tower and looked up, his hands at his sides. "I'm here," he called out, his voice carrying on the thin air. Ella descended the ladder, meeting him on the unstable wooden deck. Leo remained hidden. Davies looked at her, his gaze analytical, devoid of surprise. "Ella Vance, or should I use your real name? I read your file when Roth pulled you. I approved the extraction." "Did you approve the purge too?" Ella's voice was flat. Davies' eyes hardened. "No, that was Aegis cleaning their own mess. By the time I found out the training accident report was already signed, I thought you were all dead." He glanced around. "Where's the other one, Leo? The one who stole the data?" Leo stepped out from behind a support beam, the rifle held low but ready. Davies didn't flinch. "You have the drive," Davies stated, "and you think I'm here to take it from you or kill you for it. I'm not. I'm here because that page you sent me is the only piece of evidence I've ever seen that directly ties Aegis to the override. My signature was on the original, legitimate op. Theirs is on the war crime. I've spent 6 years trying to get that proof." The wind whistled through the tower. Ella and Leo exchanged a glance. It could be a trick. "Why should we believe you?" Leo asked. Because Roth is in protective custody, Davies said bluntly. Aegis intercepted your lighthouse check-in. They moved on his cabin 6 hours after your chat. He got a distress call out to me. My people extracted him. He's safe. He told me you run and that you had the drive. He also told me you'd only trust a direct meeting. So here I am. He reached slowly into his jacket pocket. Leo raised the rifle an inch. Davies pulled out a smartphone. He tapped the screen and held it up. A live video feed showed Colonel Roth sitting in a nondescript room holding that day's newspaper. He looked tired but unharmed. He spoke. Ella, Leo, it's clean. The general is the only one we can trust. Give him the drive. The tension in Ella's shoulders didn't ease. And what happens after? Aegis still has teams in the field. They think we have it. They won't stop. Davies put the phone away. Aegis Dynamics is currently the subject of a federal racketeering and fraud investigation. That became public this morning. Their government contracts are frozen. Their assets are being seized. The story is about financial crimes. The press doesn't have the Al-Sara story. Yet, he looked at them both. The drive is the nail in their coffin. With it, I can push for a full, public congressional hearing, not a closed-door session, a public one. The families in Al-Sara deserve that. Your unit deserves that. And us? Leo's question hung in the air. You have two choices, Davies said. One, you come in with me, you testify, you become the faces of this. You'll have protection, but you'll also have a target on your backs for the rest of your lives. Or two, you give me the drive, I take it from here. You walk away right now and you disappear forever. New names, new lives far away from here, but you'll never speak of this again. You'll never see each other again, and you'll have to trust that I'll do what I promised. The choice was brutal and final. Ella looked at Leo. They had run together, fought together, and carried the weight of their dead together for weeks. The idea of splitting apart felt like another kind of death, but the idea of stepping into the spotlight, of reliving the horror in front of cameras in Congress, that was a prison too. Leo spoke first. We give you the drive. He looked at Ella, a question in his eyes. She gave a slight, pained nod. He reached into his own jacket and handed over the small, black flash drive. Davies took it, his expression solemn. You're sure? We're sure, Ella said. Just make it matter. Davies nodded. He pulled a second, smaller envelope from his pocket. In the Jeep, there's a bag, 2 new identities, passports, driver's licenses, social security cards, and keys to a safety deposit box in Seattle with enough cash to start over. Separately, the instructions inside tell you where to go. Follow them exactly. He handed Ella the envelope. I will do what I promised. You have my word. He turned and began the climb back down the mountain. Ella and Leo watched until the Jeep was a speck on the valley road, then disappeared. They stood in the silent tower for a long time. The envelope felt heavy in Ella's hand. So this is it, Leo said, his voice rough. This is it, Ella echoed. They followed the instructions. They hiked back to their truck and drove to a predetermined junction. There they found the Jeep Davies had left with 2 separate backpacks inside. One marked with an E, one with an L. The instructions were clear. Take the Jeep, drive to the bus station in Missoula. Ella's bus left for Portland at 8 p.m. Leo's left for Denver at 8:05. They were to destroy their old identities and never make contact again. At the bus station, under the harsh fluorescent lights, they stood awkwardly by the vending machines. The silence was everything they couldn't say. You could come with me, Leo said. The words rushed, breaking protocol. Ella shook her head, tears she refused to shed burning her eyes. They'll be watching for that, for us together. This is the only way we both live. He pulled her into a brief, fierce hug. Never leave, he whispered, the unit motto. Never forget, she whispered back. Then they turned and walked to different gates. Ella boarded her bus, took a window seat, and didn't look back. She watched the lights of Missoula fade into the darkness, her new passport burning a hole in her pocket. 3 months later, from a small apartment in Vancouver, Canada, Ella saw the headline. The Senate Armed Services Committee had opened a surprise hearing into alleged war crimes and contractor misconduct in Yemen. The lead witness was General Marcus Davies. The evidence presented was damning. Aegis Dynamics executives were arrested on live television. The name of the Raven program was splashed across every major news network, their story told not as a tragedy, but as a betrayal. She saw a photo of Colonel Roth testifying. He looked old but resolved. He never mentioned her or Leo. Their names were not in the record. They had vanished as promised. Ella, under her new name, got a job at a community pool teaching swimming lessons. The water was still her sanctuary. One afternoon, a year later, she was cleaning out her locker at the pool and found a small, folded piece of paper wedged in the back of the door. It hadn't been there that morning. Her heart stopped. She unfolded it. It was a photograph of a beach at sunset. On the back, in familiar handwriting, were 3 words, "I'm in Portland." It was a risk, a terrible, wonderful risk. He had broken the rules. He had found a way to signal her, to leave a trail only she would understand. He was giving her a choice again. Ella stood there, the sounds of children splashing in the pool echoing down the hallway. She had a good, quiet life, a safe one. She could throw the note away and continue. She folded the paper and put it in her pocket. That evening, she booked a one-way ticket to Portland. She didn't know what she would find or if it was another kind of trap. But for the first time since that day on the beach, she was choosing something for herself, not just surviving. Some stories don't end with a victory or a defeat. They end with a choice. And sometimes the only way to truly leave the past behind is to stop running from the one person who understands it. The final, surprising detail was this: the safety deposit box key Davies gave her. It opened a box that contained not just cash, but a single, unmarked envelope. Inside was a photo of the entire Raven program team, including a young Marcus Davies standing with them. He wasn't just their architect. He was their first commander. He had been there from the very beginning, and he had been trying to save them all along. So what is the weight of a secret? For Ella Vance and Leo, it was the anchor that pulled them beneath the surface of their own lives for 6 years. It was the distance between 2 people on a bus platform. It is the silence carried by countless others who walk among us, their past sealed behind a wall of classification or shame or survival. This story is not unique in its geometry, only in its details. A beach, a tattoo, a phrase spoken in the sand. The catalyst is always small. The aftershocks are what define us. The Raven program was dismantled. Aegis Dynamics collapsed under the weight of its crimes. The hearings made headlines, then faded from the news cycle. The world moved on. For the architects and the auditors, it was a case closed. For the families in a village called Al-Sara, it was a fragment of acknowledgement in a ledger of loss. And for the 2 ghosts at the center of it all, their fate is not in the official record. We are left with questions that have no clean answers. Was Marcus Davies a savior or a schemer, cleaning his own conscience? Did Ella ever get on that plane to Portland? Did they find a way to build a life on the other side of all that running, or did the past finally catch up? Some stories resist an ending. They simply become quieter. But this isn't really a story about spies or cover-ups. It's a story about the masks we wear and the moments they slip. The lifeguard, the tourist, the nurse, the soldier. We pass these people every day. We are these people. We all have chapters we keep closed. The lesson isn't to go looking for tattoos or whispering codes. The lesson is to recognize that everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about. The quiet woman who saves your life one ordinary afternoon might be saving herself too. The video of that rescue on the beach still exists online. It has a few thousand views. The comments are mostly mundane. Great job, lifeguard. Scary stuff. No one in that crowd knew they were witnessing the first public crack in a 6-year-old dam. History doesn't always announce itself with sirens. Sometimes it washes ashore with the tide, and only 2 people on the entire beach understand what it means. If this story stayed with you, it's because it's built on a truth we all feel, that our identities are fragile, that loyalty is the strongest and most dangerous bond, and that redemption is not a single act, but a daily choice. We document these narratives not for the spectacle, but for the silence they break. Your attention is the currency that keeps these forgotten histories alive. So if you believe that some truths, no matter how buried, deserve to see the light, then help us keep telling them. Hit the subscribe button below. It's more than a click, it's a signal. It tells the algorithm, and more importantly, it tells the people living these quiet, extraordinary lives that their stories matter, that they are seen. Thank you for watching and for remembering.